Jamie's swim shirt, and it fits perfect, but he feels like he's gonna faint. You can sit, but it's a 3X. The 4X was too huge, and so this one is perfect for the swimming with his. Do you want to put on your swim trunks too to show him?
Not really.
Oh, all right, you don't have to. All right, so now he's just going to keep the swimsuit shirt on.
We're going to try all these others on.
And I have them in the order in which to try them on. Oh, it's blurry. Okay. Now, I ordered this one in a 4X and it was huge. Of course, maybe you've lost a little weight being so sick. And this is a 3X. You don't have to button it. Just hold the buttons together. You're crooked. Oh, yeah.
I like this color. It's pretty and bright, and
it looks good. Okay, that's a keeper. I like it. All right, now this one I'm weary of. I'm worried about. I think it's going to be huge. Baby blue. Do you love blue?
Yeah, I can't put this arm up or it falls out of joint.
Yeah, be careful. We don't want that to happen.
So when I put my shirts on, I have a way of doing it.
Now, yeah, hold the belly buttons. The belly buttons together.
Get the neck here straight.
And hold the belly buttons. Oh, you look slim in that. Those stripes going up and down. Look how long it is. It'll say tucked in good. Do you like the fabric? He's feeling the ridges in the fabric.
Yeah, the ridges are a little weird, but they feel fine. I like the fabric and stuff.
I like it. That looks good on it. That's like a dress shirt.
Yeah, it's quite a nice
But
shirt.
it doesn't have a pocket in it. No pocket. Darn it. But I like it. Okay.
Yeah, that was a pretty nice one.
It is. Real nice. Okay, now the next one is...
Okay, I have to...
I'll fix them, honey.
Fold them.
I'm going to put them all and get them washed up and packed. How many days till the cruise? Do you know? It's like 16 or something. Are you excited?
This arm can go up, but this one can't.
Yeah, be very careful. Now, pull that. Look it. You need to pull it around, yeah, and fix it. Pull it around, yeah. Pull it around your other arm. This is hanging off of this shoulder terribly. Because you need to pull it to the other side more. The back piece. And the back piece.
Kind of where it wants to hang.
I know, but you need to, like, pull it back. Pull the back of your shirt down. That'll do it. The other side. Yeah, now the other side. The other side. With your other hand. Let go of that. Now go back there. Now pull that back. Yeah, okay. And then pull the collar up like this. You're still not doing it. All right.
It's kind of like it's a little bit big right through this.
I know, because they don't realize that you... Okay, I like that one. And it matches your wedding ring really nice.
Our blue wedding rings you gave me yesterday.
He hasn't lost it. It isn't turning color or anything. Okay, that's a keeper. We did better luck this time. And now for this one that is like a Wrangler, but it isn't. It has double pockets and
it's kind of a weird color, actually.
I know, but pull it over up onto your arm better. See that sleeve, how it just hangs like you don't have a shoulder?
Well, I can't help that. They're both...
Well, it's supposed to be pulled back. See that seam on the shoulder? There you go. There you go. It's still kind of... But it's made to be that big look in the sleeves.
It does feel really big.
Yeah, I'm going to get you a smaller one. This is just cut bigger. So do you like it though? Maybe you don't even care about having this shirt. If it was fit better, would you want it?
It's got a seam here where you can take it in.
No, the shoulders don't fit good. I'd have to take the sleeve out, move the sleeve up, move this. No, I'm not going to do all that. Do you like it enough?
I like it quite well. I like the 2 pockets, and
It's just too big. The cut's different. The cut has the big sleeves that hang. It's for
kind of a
people.
weird bluey steel gray color. It's
Yeah.
kind of a weird color, but
Denim.
it
Put your
looks
arm
nice.
up like this. Both arms. Okay. I think you need to stand on your head so that your stomach weight will go up into your shoulders. And if you stood on your head for a couple hours every day, maybe that would happen. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just trying to chuckle that, you know, like that's my problem too. We both need to stand on our heads so our stomachs.
For my whole life, I've always been slim and
I know.
and everything, and then the last 10 years, this belly's bloomed out, and I can't seem to.
Did you weigh though? I think you've lost some weight.
The weight at the doctor's office was down 5 or 6 pounds.
Don't button it. You're taking that off. I don't want you to go through the agony of buttoning it all and having to unbutton it. Okay, we're going to cut Jamie's hair today. I'm going to do it kind of short, so in 2 weeks it'll be perfect for the cruise. Then I don't have to cut it before the cruise.
I can't hardly imagine that our cruise is going to be in 2 weeks.
I know. How do you feel? You could sit down now.
I'm feeling a lot better the last couple of days.
But I don't know if you'll be able to even use your walker and walk in the airport all that way. You might have to have a wheelchair.
Well, you made me walk all over Sydney, Australia.
But you're worse now because of your cold and your breathing. And so I'm thinking we might get you a wheelchair. And then...
No, I'm not quite decrepit to the point that I have to have a wheelchair, but...
I had one after my surgery. We'll tell everybody he just had surgery. And that's why he's in the wheelchair. He's been sick.
Yeah, we don't want to lie to everybody.
Okay. He's old. But you're not that old. How old did your dad live?
My dad and my grandfather both lived to 94 and a half.
That's on the Burton side.
On my dad's side.
But I think you're going to live to be 90.
On my dad's side, we have quite the genealogy, but you have to be a LDS church member to understand the geology on my dad's side.
Meaning?
Very few people would understand.
Yeah, we don't need to tell. He tells strangers that don't even know what he's talking about. It's just that the lineage, the genealogy lineage of where the ancestors came from. But okay, so what about how do you feel today?
I feel okay so far.
Show your black fingernail.
It's got a big old hole up in right here at the back where it's starting to...
It's getting better, but he didn't paint his fingernails black. We could paint all of them black and it would cover it. You'd look so cool. Put an earring in your ear and wear a necklace. You could be a different image.
When I mashed it, I didn't think it was mashed too bad, but then it kept getting darker, and now as it's growing out, the whole end is definitely going to grow out and fall off eventually. But you have to try to keep it from falling off as long as you can.
My camera will not focus. I don't know why. If I go out... Oh, now it's real blurry. I'm going to have to get a new phone for my camera.
You can't get it to focus right?
Not very good.
I
So,
could-
what
I
else
could
are
move-
you going to do today?
I could move closer.
Hey, that's an idea. I just don't want your oxygen in the camera and your, you know, bedside stuff and your, because then it makes you look old with oxygen back there. So, what are you going to do today?
The last 4 or 5 antibiotic pills, instead of taking 2 a day, I'll take 1 a day.
But maybe it
For
won't
4 or
help
5
because you need
days.
a stronger dose. Jamie, you need the stronger dose.
Well, you need a little bit of it to trail along and stay in your system.
Well, we could go back to urgent care and tell that Brendan that, you know, you're not better yet. You need more.
I think I'll be fine as long as I keep taking them till the end, even if it's
Till the end?
1 a day.
Yeah. Did you ever want to wear an earring?
No, I think the kids that have all these nose rings and boys with big earrings and everything, I think they look stupid.
Yeah. What about me with earrings? Do you like when I wear earrings?
I don't mind women wearing earrings.
Okay.
Sometimes those great big old giant ones look stupid on women too, but
Yeah. All right.
I really hate the nose rings. These teenagers with their nose rings look like they got snot dripping out.
What about a bull that wears the ring in the nose? I always think of that. Like, do you want someone to tie a string in that ring in your nose and pull you around like a bull?
We once had the biggest bull here there was a cattle dealer that had been selling cattle his whole life, and he had scales and everything, and when we finally sold the old bull, he said it was the biggest animal he had ever had on his scales.
Wow. Was he mean?
For a lot of years, he wasn't too mean. My dad always had a way of, if you just put a ring in the nose and let them drag a chain off the ring, they'd always tear the ring out of their nose.
Really?
As they'd run or do anything, they'd accidentally step on the chain and it would yank.
They didn't do it on purpose. It was just happened.
So most people that had these big bulls, they put the rings in their nose and stuff, but my dad always said that you have to leave the horns on the bull. We'd cut the horns we'd cut them off so that they were stubs. And my dad always tied the chain around the horn, or put a loop around the horn, and then the chains were left loose so they wouldn't cut in or anything. And then he ran the chain down through the nose. So when the bull was dragging or anything, it was pulling off of the horns. And everybody wondered why my dad would leave the horns on the bull. Cut the horns off, they'd always say. My dad said the minute you cut the horns off, you don't have any way to control the bull. And the old bull would sometimes come in the milk barn with the cows, especially if one was in heat. And then we would catch him in the old barn, and the barn had pipes down that made the stall work. And we'd get the bull's chain and we'd slowly cinch him up till we had his head right up tied to these poles, these big height. And he was so big that he just flex his neck and it would bend the whole poles and everything. It was so strong. But what we would do is that periodically we'd take a saw and we'd cut a end off of the horns would be growing, and so periodically you cut the end off of the horn, and then horns would be sore, and that'd make his head sore, so he'd mind you. It sounds kind of mean, but it was the only way to control these big bulls. And this bull his body was so big, it was like 10 feet long, and he was 6 feet high at the shoulders, and he was about 3 feet wide. And as they started to get mean, these old Holstein bulls would turn mean after a while. There's nothing you could do to stop them. With cutting his horns and getting him in and tying him up and showing him who's boss and all this kind of stuff would kind of set him back into his place. But eventually he got where the horns all turn solid bone, and then you can cut them and they doesn't hurt the bull. And we had a neighbor that always he had a camper on his truck that hung out over the back end about 2 feet, and he always would go down and go fishing at the river. And one time he had to stop at the gate where the bull was he tried to get his wife to go out and open the gate, but she was too scared, and that was just a joke, I think, that he tried on his wife. Anyway, the old bull, he got behind the guy with his camper and got his head down underneath the back of the unit, and he was picking his whole pickup in a big camper and everything. He was picking it off the ground and bouncing him. And finally he drove away and got away from it, but I don't think they went fishing that night. They were too scared to get through the gate. And then it finally got when I'd go get the cows that the old bull would start following me up and down the fence. I would be on one side of the fence along the lane or something, and the old bull would stalk up and down trying to get across to me. When it got to that point where it wasn't safe to be in the pasture with him, we can't remember if we ended up getting his chain tied to the tractor, and we led him up to the scales where we sold him. Anyway, the cattle dealer up there said, well, I've had a lot of these great big old giant workhorses and everything on the scales to weigh them. Says, but he'd never had an animal I think he weighed 3,500 pounds or something, if I remember right. He was a special bull that was from some genetics back in Wisconsin or something, and that particular line, his father had been a great big bull or something. And
what color was he?
He was just black and white like all the rest of the Holsteins. My dad had bought him to improve the genetics in our herd. I think he was a artificial insemination bull.
Did he improve?
We actually bought 2 of them to have the good genetics, and one of them always was kind of scrawny and never grew up to be anything. And then the other one grew up to be this giant bull. Anyway, my dad was very smart. He knew how to do all this stuff.
Nan, who was Nan and the horses or something they were called?
Well, I hardly remember these. These are when I was a little teeny kid. My dad had a team of horses that they were big draft horses. And one was called Nance and one was called Nell. Nance and Nell.
Were they boys or girls?
Judging by their name, it sounds like they must have been girls. But when Nance and Nell were young, they had a lot of thoroughbred in them, so they were really fiery and spirited horses that were hard to control. And they were big and they were very strong, and there was a lot of stories my dad used to tell about them. He'd take them to the county fair up here, and they used to have these old horse pulls where people would bring their teams and pull. And with, I can't remember if it was Nance and Nell, or there was one time they had at the county fair, they had people come with their horses and they had a horse race. And I think this was another one of the old fiery, I was trying to think of what this horse's name was. She was quite a big horse that my dad used to ride, and she was very fiery, and she was half thoroughbred, and she was probably a thoroughbred crossed with a horse like Nance and Nell. That made her bigger and a little bit more like a little characteristics of having a workhorse characteristics. And she was very long-legged, and she was very fiery and hard to control. And once in a while, she had the tendency to want to run away with the guy, with her rider. My dad would be riding her down in the hay fields when they'd buck up these big piles of hay. And one time she ran away, and he thought, well, I'll just run the old thing into one of these piles of hay and stop her. And they had these piles all in a line, and when he ran her into there, she jumped the first pile and then jumped the second pile and then the third, jumping them down the line till he about shook my dad's head off. And usually you had to let her run about a mile, and then she'd finally quit. So he took her to the county fair when they had this horse race, and he was going to race her with other people's horses. And they were all on the starting line. I'm trying to remember my dad's story here. They were on the starting line ready to go, and then when the gun went off, it scared the horse, and she reared over, almost fell over backwards, but she ended up the wrong direction, and she took off down the racetrack going the wrong direction when everybody else's horses took off the other way. he finally pulled her head around enough to get her to swing around and head the right direction. But by then he was half a lap behind everybody. And he said by the time I think they had to run another couple of laps or something, I don't remember. By the time they had run the other couple of laps, she had caught up with the other horses, and I don't think she won the race, but she was right neck to neck with the leader. And then it was her grandson that was my horse that I raised as a colt and trained, and he was kind of long-legged and could run really good and everything too. But I had him trained so good he wasn't the type that would run away. My horse was such a good horse. I had him trained so he could stand on his back and run up behind him and jump on and up over his rump. And
You were like the Lone Ranger.
well, when I was a kid, we kind of used to pretend like we had horses that way.
Yeah, but I have a question for you. How come you never had a cowboy hat and you never had cowboy boots, and you were a real horse and cow person, and you lived on a ranch?
Well, a lot of our neighbors and other kids my age growing up on the other farms and stuff, they all had their cowboy hats, and they practiced their lassoing, and they were that way. But I was always grew up more as an old farm boy. I had big leather shoes that we wore every day, and the other people would wear their cowboy boots, and I've actually never owned a pair of cowboy boots in my life.
I know, I just think that's weird.
The cowboy boots were always quite expensive, and I would get my one pair of, they were a Red Wing brand, and there was an old shoe store up here in Afton that we'd buy them from all the time. And we only got one pair a year.
I'm sorry.
I think we did have a pair of Sunday shoes or something, but I never have, well, I always hated hats. When I'd put the cowboy hats on and go out in the sun and everything, I'd get so hot and sweaty under them, and I never could stand to wear them. Here a few years ago, we bought a Crocodile Dundee, the old leather hat like Crocodile Dundee had worn over in Australia. And it's a pretty cool hat, but every time I put it on, I can't stand it. I have to take it off.
Maybe you should wear it in the winter. You won't sweat.
I don't know. I've always had this, even baseball caps and stuff like that. I guess in my older years, I've got to where I can wear them. And when I'm up gardening in the sun and stuff, I'll wear a baseball cap. And I do have some of these straw hats that I use once in a while when I'm gardening and stuff, but I've never been much to like to have a hat on my head for some reason. Anyway, I have tons of old stories about my horse.
I know. We should do a video of it someday. But what about when you're breathing better? But what about
my old horse, when we'd take him hunting, and we had other horses and others had their horses, and my horse could always out-climb and out-walk, out-jump. They'd leave the other horses in the dust.
What's the name of that horse?
I never named him.
What?
I just called him my horse.
Oh, that's a good name. What color was it?
Chestnut brown.
Mm.
We had him up elk hunting up behind Dead Man Mountain one time. There was a steep ravine, and we had been following an elk trail that came down around the end of Dead Man Mountain, and we tried to follow the elk trail down through this steep ravine and up the other side. And up the other side there was about a 4-foot cliff. It went up steep. And then the horses had to jump over this 4-foot cliff. And down in the bottom of the ravine were big, giant boulders. And one of her hunting friends had a little Appaloosa horse that was quite a active little horse that would take off and do anything. And my horse started up the steep trail, and right when he got to the point where he had to leap and jump over this 4-foot cliff, the little Appaloosa was owned by another friend that was named Joe. Anyway, Joe's little Appaloosa horse charged up after my horse up behind him, and he pushed right up along the side of him when he was getting ready to try to jump, and he knocked him off the trail where he dropped down about another 2 feet. So he would have had like a 6-foot jump to get over, and he couldn't flounder over it, and he tipped right over backwards and fell down and landed between 2 great big giant rocks on his back. And I had my gun in a scabbard on the side, and it broke my gun. And the horse was pinned on his back in between these 2 rocks till we came and pulled him up around and got him out of there. And then he was shaking a little bit, and one of my brother-in-law, he was not a very avid hunter, and that scared him, and he says, "I'm going to go back to camp." And I said, "Well, this horse is shaking. We need to take him back to camp." So we sent my horse with my brother-in-law back to camp with him. And I can't remember what the rest of the hunt that year was, but the next winter, when we got the horses in the spring, they'd usually paw and eat grass along the creek banks during the winter. When we'd get them back in, when the first time I got on my horse, he lit into bucking and bucked me off, and then Dad tried to get on him, and he bucked my dad off and kicked him in the face as he came off. And he just had this wild look in his eyes, and nobody could even get around him. He would rear back. My dad finally got him tied up to the barn, and he'd rear back and kick at anybody that even came around anywhere. And his grandmother and his mother, those horses, when they got about 12 or 15 years old, they all went crazy. And we think that he kind of went crazy like his mother and grandmother had. His grandmother was that big horse that was jumping the piles of hay, I think. And so my dad ended up selling him to the rodeo club that was here in the valley that would go around with bucking horses and put on rodeos. And they sold him to this, it was called the Pagan Stream Rodeo Club. And they sold him to them, and I guess he was the only horse that they had that nobody could ever ride. So they would announce him as Burton's old irrigation pony, and now he's a horse that nobody could ride.
That's sad.
And then that winter, the Pagan Stream Rodeo Club had their horses over on these West Hills here, and they went and rounded them up, and as they ran across the icy road right down here at this corner, my horse slipped and fell and couldn't get back up. And so we had a mink farm up here where they'd butcher all the old animals that nobody could use to feed their mink, and they came down and butchered him, and they said his back was broken.
Wow.
So his broken back made him go crazy.
When he fell?
And then nobody could ever ride him. But then when he fell on the ice, he injured his back again, and I guess he couldn't get up from there. So that's what happened to my horse. But boy, he was a good horse when he was good.
And then you had a cow that you could ride. What was your cow's name?
My dad had given both my brother Kim and I a calf, and as they grew up, a heifer calf, and as they grew up, they became our cows. And that's back when we were selling milk in these little 10-gallon milk cans. And we got to have our own milk can with our own number and put our milk in the milk can. And that was whatever we earned on our milk, we got to save or keep. My cow was named Seven because she had a black front of her head, but she had this big white 7 down her forehead. And I had her so tame that we would go and she'd be laying down in the pasture, and we'd go lay down and lean up against her. And when we would have to go across the river into a pasture on the other side to get the cows, we'd have to wade the river or take our shoes off and wade the river. Many times when we would drive the cows back, I'd kind of hang on to her neck and hold her back, and as she went down over the bank of the river, I'd jump on her back and ride her across the river. We used to feed her candy. Lifesavers and different things like that, and she loved that candy. I think when you had Elsie,
Yeah, I fed her.
you had a calf that you fed, and then I think you gave her some candy and stuff, but
She loved it.
she loved the candy. Anyway, that was my old cow 7.
How'd she die?
I don't remember. I think she just got older and got where she didn't milk very good or something, and we ended up calling her out of the herd.
Are you trying to have a facelift? Pulling your face back like that. You don't really have very bad wrinkles for how old you are.
Well, I have a facelift.
Your skin is pretty good for being 75.
Yeah, it's pretty checkerboard and wrinkly down around some places. Back here's bad.
No, but your wrinkles aren't bad on your cheeks and stuff. And you've been out in the sun a lot. You should look like a lizard, but you don't. You don't look like a lizard a bit.
My dad, he was quite the guy. I wish he could have written his life story into a book.
He wrote poems. He has a whole book of poems.
Yeah, he did write poems and stuff, but my dad told us once that he had broken 65 bones over the years. He was up on a ladder in the winter trying to fix a lady's porch roof, and his ladder broke out of the ice where he chopped little holes in the ice to put the ladder down in so it wouldn't slide, and somehow that ice broke away and let the ladder come out and slide down, and he fell down on the lady's cement steps and broke his hip.
That was the first time he broke it?
That was the first time he broke it, and it was right not a few houses down from the old hospital. And the doctor lived a block over, old Dr. Perks. And Dr. Perks happened to be coming back from lunch, and when my dad had fallen and broke his hip, and he went over to the hospital and got a wheelchair and come and hauled my dad back to the hospital. And then they put a big giant metal ball in his socket, which ended up wearing out his leg bone and his socket both. And then it would break off, and then he'd go have it redone again. My dad would break his hip like 20 times.
And then his leg kept getting shorter and shorter.
And then his leg kept getting shorter, and he kept tacking. He'd get these old thongs with big rubber soles on them, and then he'd cut the shape of his sole out of there and tack them on the bottom. Pretty soon his foot had a layer of lift on him that long. Yeah, my dad had a lot of stories.
He had crutches.
My dad got hit by lightning 2 or 3 times, and he got buried in an avalanche once, and he had a big load of hay on his wagon, and somehow he had to go down through the streams, and somehow coming back up the other bank or something, the load tipped over and buried my dad under the load, under the water.
He could have died.
And then my dad helped build the Palisade Reservoir down here, and he was standing on a scaffolding about 70 feet up from when they first started to fill the lake. And big trees, all the trees from the whole valley would float down, and they'd get down to the big intake off the lake, and they would just snap them up like little matches and suck them in. And anyway, somebody swung a board and knocked him off the scaffold, and he swung over backwards and happened to come down 20 feet below and landed inside the next layer of scaffold. He must have had to somersault to get over enough to land inside the scaffolding. Otherwise, he would have gone right down the hole.
Wow.
And another time he was building a big bridge across Snake River, and they had dug out a big crib in the bottom, and they were digging down in, and they said they were about 14 feet below the bottom of the river. And they were down in, he and one other worker that he worked with all the time. They were down in there when all of a sudden the banks caved in and the water rushed in, and all they thought to do was just to jump as hard as they could, and even as high as they could jump, the gravel and everything as it caved in and around them, buried their legs almost clear to their knees. And then the water, of course, filled in overhead. And they had to squirm and wiggle and struggle to get out of there before they drowned. And there was things like big water pumps and stuff and generator and stuff down in there that they never did get out. So my dad had so many stories that he tells all about the olden days when he was a kid and how they struggled to try to get the community going here in Star Valley.
That'll be another show. Okay, we better stop. 46 minutes now. People have things to do, Jamie. You have things to do. Look at all your list of what you're going to do today.
Doesn't seem like we've been here 46 minutes.
It doesn't? Time flies when you're old.
Does it seem like it to you?
Yes, I've been holding this. My hand's going to sleep, holding the camera. And I got things to do. But you were telling such good stories that I just let you talk. But we'll do it again.
Well, the old ladies will
Hey,
listen to my stories.
some people love your stories. So, all right.
You're not still filming,
I am still filming. So, if I have the camera like this and I'm holding it, I'm still filming. Because if I wasn't filming, I would have it down because my arm is getting tired. I should have a tripod with it. Push your glasses up. Don't look over the top because then you look suspicious.
Okay, stop filming.